We have some related questions, so I answer them as one. How do you suggest one find balance and maintain presence regarding current political issues and situations that seem so dangerous to freedom and humane policies, both for our presence and when interfacing with others? How to deal with that within ourselves and when relating to others? And one or two similar questions, for example, any tips for how I can be a good citizen who does her part to stand against social and environmental injustice while simultaneously staying true to my own awakening and my need for tranquility? There is what I've been talking about just now, and there's a relationship. When you communicate with others, let's say about political situation or whatever it may be, we communicate verbally or in writing, or just have a monologue in your head. People have monologues in their head. This is normal. The important thing to avoid so that ego doesn't come in is again to make other human beings wrong, to make wrong who they are. I'm not talking about what they do, but to make wrong who they are. There is a difference. You can criticize what a person says or does, but if you then use whatever this person says or does and say that is his or her identity, then you've created an enemy in your mind, and that is a dangerous thing to do because it strengthens the unconsciousness in the collective energy field and produces a corresponding reactive effect in the other, and then there's a mutual strengthening of that, and that leads to huge conflict, and you get more and more trapped in your ego and in being right. So if you can take action and communicate, take action without having your sense of self invested in it, so that you point out your perspective, you explain it, you substantiate it, you illustrate it. This is how I see it, this is how the situation is, this is what we need to do or be careful of. All this is fine. You can attack another person's point of view or perspective without attacking who that person is. You can attack because that is and you attack it by presenting, by showing that it is not right and presenting an alternative, so that your communication is not just pointing out what in your view is wrong, but also suggesting an alternative, so that there is the positive and negative both coming in. It's extremely satisfying to the ego to make people wrong and entire groups of people wrong. So you have to be careful with that. But you can only really, the prerequisite for being able to do that is that you need to, and here we come again to the foundation for it all, for conscious living and conscious doing. The foundation is that you derive your sense of identity from that deeper place of consciousness, of presence. You are the awareness. You are not the thought. The thought is fine, but if there is self-seeking in the thought structures, that means you are identified with your thoughts, which being identified with your thoughts means seeking your sense of self in those thoughts. So when you present your opinion or your viewpoint, you are so identified with it that anybody who even questions, not even attack, anybody who questions your viewpoint or perspective is, and this is unconscious, deeply unconscious, ego. Anybody who questions your perspective or viewpoint, which you don't know is a perspective or viewpoint, to you it is the absolute truth, because you are identified with the thought. Anybody who questions it will be regarded as somebody who is attacking who you are. He is actually an enemy, your enemy. And this is the essence of unconsciousness, to be identified completely with your mental positions. Instead of, but how can you not be identified with your mental positions if you have never known that deeper place within yourself where your true identity resides? So I cannot even tell, if you tell somebody, don't be identified with your mental positions and your thoughts, your perspectives, your viewpoint, don't mistake them for the absolute truth. They don't know what you're talking about, and they can't do, what do you mean? That's all there is. So the foundation for being able to use your mind consciously instead of being used by your mind, which is the essence of unconsciousness, the foundation for that is find out who you are in the essence of your being, and that is here and now, the consciousness that you are, the awareness, the presence. That's what's left when right now you don't remember your history. Right now you don't remember even your name. Unless I ask you, you're not thinking your name. No, okay. So you can be yourself without remembering your name. And if I don't ask you about your history, right at this moment, you probably don't remember any of your personal history. Unless you go there, you have to retrieve it in your mind. But you don't need it now. Now, does it mean you cannot be yourself now? Does it mean if you don't remember your telephone number and your email address and your personal history, you can't be yourself? No. These are just things that are added on to you. But even without remembering any of these things, I don't remember my email address, I don't remember my name, I don't remember my history even. And here I am sitting and perceiving, and I can you feel yourself? Can you feel the essence of you right now without the memory of you? Yes, in fact you can feel it more strongly, but you cannot define what exactly that is. You can sense this inherent presence that you are. And you can sense it, and that inherent presence is the same whether you are a huge success story in the eyes of the world, you are a VIP and a celebrity, there may be one or two here, not that it makes much difference here, or you may be somebody who has failed in everything that he or she has done, a failed career, 3 failed marriages, many other failed relationships, bankruptcy, gone to prison, then come out of prison, then gone back into prison, made a mess of the whole thing, total failure, and yet in the moment of not remembering your history, that sense of presence is exactly the same as that sense of presence of the VIP who has a big success story. That is the unconditioned consciousness, the presence that frees you from your personality in your person. And that is, and also connects you to a much vaster intelligence, the intelligence that underlies the entire creation, that is behind everything, the organizing principle behind the physical universe, the intelligence that gradually expresses itself more and more into this world. The light, I call it the light of the source, like the sun shines its light into this world. The sun is the source of the light. Now the source of the world, we could call, if God means anything, then God is the source of all life. And of course, the source of all life has no location in space or time. Obviously, it's not somewhere in the universe God lives. God is transcendent to the universe. It is the source. God is the source of all life in the same way that the sun is the source of all light. And so the relationship between your consciousness, which is not your consciousness, it is universal consciousness expressing itself through you, the relationship between that consciousness that you are and the source is the same as the sun and the sunlight. So the consciousness in you is the light of the source, or God, shine. And that is the source itself. You cannot know. It is totally beyond anything that you could possibly even understand or think about. And yet you are an inseparable part of it, in the same way that this ray of sunlight is an inseparable part still of the sun. And yet the ray of sunlight would be both right and not right in saying, I am the sun. If the ray of sunlight says, I am the sun, in one way it is true, but in another way it is not true, because the sun is so much vaster than the ray of sunlight, and yet it is an emanation of the sun, and it is eternally connected to the sun. It is always one with the sun. So that, as you know, there have been mystics in various traditions. In Sufism, for example, it's not uncommon. Mystics have said suddenly they realized after they went through their dancing, the mind stopped completely and presence arose. And of course they lived very simply. And they came to that realization of their essence identity. And then they said to others who did not have the realization of their essence identity, they said, I am God. I realized it now. I'm God. This was not well received. And many of them did not survive for long after that. So I don't recommend it either, but although you probably won't get killed, but they will send you to someone, to see someone, and be given some pills. So that is the foundation, is to know who you are. Then your mind, you can use your mind in a way that is actually very effective. But it's no longer egoic. It's no longer in the service of ego. It no longer becomes the ego. The unobserved mind is the ego, the human ego. There's just the mind. It does what it does, and you think you are it. So the foundation for it all is consciousness. Becoming conscious here and now. Conscious of what? Usually when you read about consciousness in normal discourse, it's always raising consciousness. You read about it in newspapers and so on. They talk about raising consciousness. But it's always raising consciousness about what? So it could be raising consciousness about the environment. It's a good thing to raise consciousness about, yes. Raising consciousness about certain political situations, raising consciousness about certain injustices here and there. It's all very good. But more fundamental is raising consciousness, period. Not talking about raising consciousness of something, that comes secondary. Raising consciousness of consciousness. And so this is a little strange, almost paradox, but you all probably know what I'm talking about, not knowing conceptually, but know in the essence of your being what it means when I say become conscious that you are conscious. Or we can use the word aware. Be aware that you are aware. Be aware of awareness. Be aware of awareness. Be conscious of consciousness. Be conscious that you are conscious. Sense your consciousness, which is not yours, I just call it yours.